Cavs down in Oklahoma City tonight. They have a big one. They have to beat the Thunder again. Can they do it? Will they do it? Or will they suffer their first loss in the Western Conference? Plus, the Brooklyn Nets dropping only 67 points in an NBA game. It's the 2025 NBA. How do you only score 67 points against the LA Clippers? And is that game getting enough attention? I'm not just because of course, the low score total from Brooklyn, but because it's the two other New York and Los Angeles teams, not the glamour ones like the Knicks and the Lakers. My thoughts on that. Plus, how about Jose Ramirez getting ranked #1 by MLB Network under third baseman? So, Jose Ramirez, obviously, I got the shirt on, repping him right now. Down goes Anderson. Jose Ramirez being ranked so high for a third baseman. Plus, the upcoming slate of playoff games we'll discuss a little bit briefly in the NFL. And, of course, Ohio State, Notre Dame, the big test is on. It's Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. Welcome to today's edition of Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. Like, comment, and subscribe as always. And also, don't forget to check out the show on social media. Facebook, Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. Instagram at Hoty Raw Takes. And on X, at Hoty Andrew, you can find me. Welcome to the show. Hope everyone had a wonderful week as we head into the weekend. It's been quite snowy up here in Northeast Ohio, but we have our jackets ready to go. And we all know how Cleveland works. The snow's only going to last probably like 2 more days, and then we'll be outside playing again by next Tuesday. You know, that's just how Cleveland is. It's always been like that. We're shoveling snow, and then we're all of a sudden at the beach. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Cleveland Cavaliers in that upcoming game against the Oklahoma City Thunder tonight. They took down the Thunder in the last meeting last Wednesday in Cleveland. They beat Oklahoma City 129-122. Donovan Mitchell didn't even have a great game. Jared Allen did, along with Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. All the role players needed to do what they had to do. Donovan Mitchell could have an off night, and the Cavs still did really darn well. They did lose to Indiana over the weekend, but they went to Indianapolis and then kind of avenged their loss to the Pacers there. So the Cavs do have 5 losses now on the year. But could this be loss number 6 in OKC tonight? I think it's possible it could be. Oklahoma City does also play pretty well at home. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander can go off on any night. He went off here in Cleveland, too. I mean, he had a really good game. But having said that, Oklahoma City is definitely going to hit the gas tonight, and I think it's going to be on the Cleveland Cavaliers to try to render that a little bit. I think the momentum is definitely going to be on Oklahoma City's side, not just because it's a home game, but because they've kind of rallied as of late after that game against the Cavs to get back on a little bit of a winning streak here. The Cavs did stumble that game against Indiana, which is why I think they're going to stumble tonight. But having said that, though, I'm not really panicking about this game if I'm the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think this could be a great primetime matchup once again. Heck, this could be an NBA Finals preview as well. The way Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is playing football right now, you look at a guy that is just all around probably the leading MVP candidate, and how well he's been playing basketball, not just this year, but last year as well. He's something else. And I think when you look at that trade for Paul George with the Clippers, Oklahoma City is probably laughing about it now. And Sam Presti, we know what he's able to do. And this is also a lineup that doesn't even have Shaq Holmgren back in it. So there's a lot of work to do. And you look at some of those bench players. I mean, a guy like Lugren's Dort could play pretty well on a given night. So, he's just a contributor, but he's another great piece for Oklahoma City. They have a really solid roster, and I think when you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers, their roster's solid too. Kenny Atkinson obviously doing a tremendous job, giving the Cavs a run for their money with all the other opponents they've faced in the league. But having said that, I think Oklahoma City, they played the Cavs tough here in Cleveland. I think they're going to play them even tougher at home. I think Donovan Mitchell, I think he's going to have to be a superstar tonight in order for the Cleveland Cavaliers to possibly bring home the bacon in this one. But having said that, is it possible? Yeah, the Cleveland Cavaliers could win this game. But I like Oklahoma City in this one tonight. But I'm not panicking if I'm a Cleveland Cavaliers fan. And hey, I think a lot of people would love to see a Cavs-Thunder final. A Cavs-Thunder final. I think that would be tremendous for the league. A smaller market team and maybe a little bit bigger with Cleveland, but a little bit of a bigger market team. Maybe that wouldn't be like a ratings king that the NBA is also hoping for. It almost happened in 2016, by the way, if Oklahoma City didn't blow a 3-1 lead just like the Warriors did to us. But having said that, Cavs OKC, I would love to see that in the finals. Will it happen? I'm not so sure yet. I'm not going to get any finals predictions, but this is a finals possible preview. So let's see how these two teams match tonight. I'm going to give Oklahoma City the edge in this one. I think SGA is going to go off. I think Donovan Mitchell plays a lot better in this game than he did against Oklahoma City the first time. But is it going to be enough for the Cavs to overcome the Thunder tonight? I don't think so. But as I said, as a Cavs fan, I'm not panicking win or loss tonight. I kind of just have put the regular season in cruise control. All right, so that's my thoughts on the Cleveland Cavaliers going into tonight's game. They still have the best overall record in the NBA. The Thunder, on the other hand, still have the best overall record in the Western Conference. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the recent NBA games that have taken place. And I want to start things off by the Nets-Clippers game. And I was really intrigued by this game because there's really not much of a story here. I know Kawhi Leonard's getting back into the lineup for the Los Angeles Clippers, and that's a little bit of a story, obviously, of course. And you look at James Harden still playing relatively well. I still think the Clippers are a bunch of old basketball players, and they're not going anywhere near the NBA Finals. But having said that, they just destroyed the Brooklyn Nets 126-67 last night. How are you an NBA team? That's not an NBA team. An NBA team that dropped 67 points in today's NBA, that lives and dies by the three. You score 67 points in an NBA game. I remember a few years back, it might have even been like 6 or 7 years ago, when Charlotte played Memphis and they won like 140-79. And I know the Grizzlies a few years ago had a high-scoring game with an insane amount of points too, and it was like 61 or 62 points, the margin of victory they had. This is a 59-point win, 126-67. If you're the Brooklyn Nets, you should be ashamed that you're even an NBA team. You should be ashamed that you're an NBA franchise. That is one of the worst performances I've seen in a long, long time. I know Milwaukee in a playoff game scored 66 points, I think like 10 years ago too. That's pretty pathetic as well. But 126-67. That's an actual NBA score. 126-67. An NBA team in 2025, like the Brooklyn Nets, dropped only 67 points in an NBA basketball game. The Brooklyn Nets should be embarrassed by themselves. They should be ashamed. The Los Angeles Clippers obviously took care of business. They deserve props for that, and good for the Clippers. But if you are the Brooklyn Nets, you should be laughing at yourselves right now. You should be laughing at your fan base right now, because they're the fools buying tickets to your games right now. 126-67. 126-67 is a score in an NBA game. That is unbelievable in the year 2025. In an era, like I said, that lives and dies by the three, that's even remotely possible. Especially in the regular season, when we damn well know that teams aren't playing defense like they will once the postseason arrives. 126-67, leave it there. The Brooklyn Nets should be ashamed of themselves. That is absolutely the most embarrassing, possibly, score I've seen maybe in the last 7-8 years. 126-67. I can't remember the last time an NBA team scored under 70. I can't remember the last time an NBA team scored under 80 in a regular season game. I'll be very honest with you. That is laughable. 126-67. And the Brooklyn Nets get the credit for that. How embarrassing. Minnesota, Anthony Edwards had some comments after they lost to Golden State yesterday. And Golden State's an okay basketball team. They're not very good. I think it's just old Steph Curry and a bunch of young guys now that are not really meshing well together. But having said that, a nice win over the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Timberwolves, he had some comments on the starting five, Anthony Edwards, saying that starting five stunk it up. And yeah, he's kind of right, they did. Rudy Gobert, I still think he's a nice piece for Minnesota, but I'm not so sure I like this whole Rudy Gobert and Anthony Edwards mix. I don't want to say it needs to break up, but the Minnesota Timberwolves last year were NBA Finals contenders, and so far they are absolutely a disaster to start this season. I mean, they're a good basketball team. They're above 500, but I mean, they're hovering around the 7, 8, 9, and 10 seeds right now. They should be where Oklahoma City is. They should be where the Houston Rockets are, who kind of came out of nowhere, but they were improving last season. They should be up in the 1, 2, 3 range. Instead, they're all the way down at the bottom of the barrel. That's pretty laughable. Honestly, the Minnesota Timberwolves to me have not been very impressive. I still think Anthony Edwards is a superstar. I think the Timberwolves are kind of wasting him this season if Minnesota only ends up being an 8 or a 7 seed. I still think he's a really good basketball player. And if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves right now, you got to figure something out and start to go on a little bit of a run. You should be at least as good as the Denver Nuggets. And the Denver Nuggets, actually, they're kind of slipping themselves. It looks like it's just the Jokic show right now. And that's about it. I don't really see anything fantastic about Denver or Minnesota, but Minnesota last night definitely looked like a very flawed basketball team against the Golden State Warriors. I'm not so sure I even like Minnesota in a playoff series right now. And from where they were a year ago, that's actually really, really sad. I think Anthony Edwards said the right things, like, hey, our starting five pretty much stunk it up. Yeah, they did. They really, really did. And I think Anthony Edwards is still a superstar, and it's still a team effort, and it's still going to be on all of them. Anthony Edwards has got to figure this out on his own with the team he's on. I still think, as I said, he's obviously going to be in the All-Star game this year, but there's going to have to be a lot more effort for the Minnesota Timberwolves, because from where they were a year ago to be where they are now is honestly kind of sad, because Minnesota was on the verge of making the NBA Finals, and now they're not. They look like they're on the verge of going home in the first round. So we'll see what pans out with the T-Wolves as the season goes on. I still think they're one of those teams that could go on a miraculous run to end the season, but we have yet to see it. And I'm not so sure that they keep playing this way and losing to the Golden State Warriors the way they did last night. I mean, that game was honestly over in the first quarter. It was like 32-10. So, yeah, I'm not so sure I'm sold on Minnesota doing any kind of damage in the NBA, especially in the postseason later this year. So we'll have to get to that as well. Looking at some of the other scores here, the Lakers over the Heat. Obviously, the Heat are kind of in flames right now. When you look at the Jimmy Butler situation, Jimmy Butler wants out of Miami, and the Miami Heat front office seems to be struggling on figuring out how to get a deal done right now, but they're still trying to... I'm still kind of baffled by this whole Jimmy Butler situation in Miami. I think before the deadline, he is definitely not going to be a member of the Miami Heat. They still have a great culture, but honestly, because of how big of a star Jimmy Butler is, I don't see the Heat really being a great playoff contending team without him. Even though they have a great culture, I still see them making the postseason, but they might run into the Cleveland Cavaliers in round one and get swept. I think the Miami Heat are a mess right now. Los Angeles Lakers have kind of picked it up a little bit, but they're no real postseason threat. I don't see them winning a series even against Houston, let alone Oklahoma City. So that'll be yet to be seen when it comes to the Los Angeles Lakers. But they're a fraudulent team. I don't buy into them at all. But the fact they beat the Miami Heat yesterday is whoop-de-freaking-do. Like, the Miami Heat are a mess themselves. So I'm not so impressed by that one. But I will give the Minnesota Timberwolves credit on this, too. They did come back and put up some big effort, but that game really was over in the first quarter, even though it was a one-point game. I should emphasize, it was a one-point game, but that game was really over. Warriors just torched them to open the run. The Pelicans over the Mavericks, I think New Orleans right now is kind of just at the bottom of the barrel doing nothing, so stumbling over a good basketball team when you're clearly a mess right now. Zion Williamson, I think, is part of the problem with New Orleans, and it's not necessarily that the talent isn't there. It's more so that he's always injured. I think it's much more of a burden on the Pelicans, and I think at some point we're going to see Zion Williamson in another jersey that's not in New Orleans Pelicans colors. Let's take a look now at the Knicks and the 76ers yesterday, too. When you look at the New York Knicks, they're starting to figure out a little bit of a rhythm. I'm starting to view them as a bigger threat in the Eastern Conference than I previously thought. I thought earlier on this year they were a little bit of overhyped, but now I'm starting to get scared of them again. And the reason I am, too, is because they did beat my Cleveland Cavaliers a few years ago in 5 games. So the New York Knicks pretty much took down the 76ers in overtime, and it wasn't even close. The Sixers, this is a really weird situation right now. They have a lot of great players there. I think Tyrese Maxey is really good. I think Paul George is not nearly the player he once was, but nevertheless, Philadelphia has him, and I don't think he's mixing well. Joel Embiid has obviously been on and off the court, so Philadelphia is really in some hot water. I think Nick Nurse is proving out to be a little in over his head in the Philadelphia job. Definitely not the coach that he was when he was with the Raptors, so I think that's a disaster waiting to happen with Philadelphia. I'm going to trust the process and that the process is going to go down the toilet. So I don't think Philadelphia is in any stretch to even win a postseason series this year. And it's a darn shame because they have a lot of talented players. I think Maxey is really, really talented. I don't think he's a superstar by any stretch, but I think he's a really good basketball player. And Joel Embiid at this point, he's so on and off the court. It's getting hard to trust what the Philadelphia 76ers process even was from the very beginning of it. We've seen so much come and go there, and for me to buy into the Philadelphia 76ers are going to make a miraculous run down the rest of the NBA regular season, I don't buy it. But the Knicks Knicks are well coached under Tom Thibodeau. And you look at what Jalen Brunson did last night. He had a really good performance. You look at Karl Anthony Towns figuring things out in a New York Knicks uniform. That's a good team, and they have a really good rotation. And I would not want to see the New York Knicks in a playoff series. And that's if I'm Milwaukee or if I'm Indiana. Even if I'm Boston. I mean, right now 2-3 is Boston-New York. And I think that series honestly could go either way at this point. And that's just based on the way Boston's also playing right now. But I could see a Celtics-Knicks series really go deep. And maybe the Cavaliers end up getting a Knicks opponent in the Eastern Conference Finals. And that's not necessarily a series I get excited about. I almost still trust the Cavs over Boston than I would over the New York Knicks. They're kind of finding their rhythm at the right time. And that win over Philly yesterday, I watched some of the highlights from it. And they're showing me a lot of talent there. And just because of my trauma from that loss a few years ago in the postseason that the Cavs suffered to the New York Knicks, I'm a little concerned about that. When you look at the Atlanta Hawks, I think they beat Atlanta yesterday. Atlanta's one of those teams where they match up really well against the Cavs, but honestly, what are they? They have no identity. It's just Trae Young and a bunch of okay to below average basketball players. It's nothing that really gives me anything to be surprised about. But the Hawks did win over the Bulls yesterday. And I'm taking a look at some of these other scores here. I mean, the Bucks over the Magic. The Bucks figured out their rhythm a little bit, I think so, but I don't view them as any kind of postseason threat. I still think Doc Rivers needs to go, and I think he's going to be part of the problem with Milwaukee. And I'm sure he'll be the scapegoat if the season even goes further south. They are 22-17, but Milwaukee is no stretch a finals contender, and that's a darn shame because you have one of the greatest players in basketball in Giannis Antetokounmpo. But honestly, there's nothing about the Milwaukee Bucks that even feels threatening in a postseason series, let alone to make a finals run. Once again, that might have been a one-and-done year when they went in 2021. The Grizzlies and Spurs, I see this game as well. Memphis, to me, has been really underrated. Ja Morant, when he's back in the lineup, has really helped elevate this Memphis Grizzlies offense. San Antonio is fighting in a lot of their games, but I don't buy into them as any sort of threat this year. I think they're going to bubble around the playoffs, and we're going to see Victor Wembanyama have some highlights, and we're going to see a few highlight reels for him. But ultimately, no, I think the Memphis Grizzlies right now are a team to be reckoned with in the Western Conference. I wouldn't want to see them in a playoff series either. They're going to probably roughly be the second or third seed, depending on the Houston Rockets and how they pan out. But yeah, the Memphis Grizzlies right now, they're a team to be reckoned with in the Western Conference. I know they're fighting with Denver for the 3 and 4 spot. Denver doesn't even look as good as the Memphis Grizzlies do right now. But the postseason's a completely different animal, and I wouldn't want to see Denver in a postseason series either with Nikola Jokic knowing what he's capable of. So there's a lot of work to be done in the NBA there, but Memphis definitely on the upswing. Boston to me, they're just playing for the regular season right now. I know they lost to Toronto yesterday. I mean the postseason. They're just playing for the postseason. Right now the regular season's kind of just emotion for them. I think Boston ultimately is going to be a real big challenge for anybody once the postseason arrives. And we'll have to see how that pans out once you get there. So those are some of the games we saw yesterday. When I look at some of the slated games that we have today, I look at the Pacers and Pistons. The Cavs Thunder is really the story out of this slate of games. I'm looking at them right now. You look at the Cavs and Thunder, that's going to be the story tonight out of all these basketball games. Suns and Wizards, I'm sorry. This whole Phoenix Suns, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker thing is not working. I don't think the Phoenix Suns are going anywhere. Obviously, we know the Wizards aren't going anywhere. Clippers have a back-to-back against the Trailblazers. That should be an easy win for them. They're starting to catch somewhat of speed. And then the Rockets and the Kings, that could be a good game. The Kings have kind of got hot as of late. I wouldn't mind watching that a little bit later as well. Houston's a fun team. And when you look at the way they're playing basketball and how Jalen Green, has been one of their superstars this year. The Houston Rockets being 27-12, and give Ime Udoka some credit too. He's up there with Kenny Atkinson as a Coach of the Year candidate. He's done a phenomenal job with the Houston Rockets, and I think we forget he did take the Celtics to the finals, and they didn't win the finals against Golden State. But there's been a lot of talk about how Ime Udoka really uplifted those Celtics from the ashes, and Joe Mazzulla kind of took that over and ran with it. So I want to give credit to Joe Mazzulla too. He's done a terrific job with the Boston Celtics, and honestly, it's been fun to root for the Celtics as of late. I know Ime Udoka does have some of that off the court stuff too, in terms of the intimate relationship and all that. So I won't get into that. And I'm not talking about Ime Udoka the person, but Ime Udoka the coach. I think he's definitely in the Coach of the Year conversation with Kenny Atkinson right now. I'd say Kenny Atkinson's definitely the favorite, though. But give the Houston Rockets a ton of credit. They've been really fun to watch, and I'm going to the CAVS game on the 25th against Houston. So I'm really excited to see that matchup with one another, and that could possibly be a finals preview. I don't think it will be because Houston's pretty young, but the Rockets are a pretty good story in the NBA this year. I don't think anyone thought they would have been as good as they are right now. So props to the Houston Rockets organization for that. All right, that's my thoughts on the NBA as it currently stands. So much basketball to go. And here on Raw Takes, we're going to be talking plenty more as the Cleveland Cavaliers continue to storm the league. And I also want to talk about some of these other teams like Oklahoma City, a small market team with so much to talk about. And even these big market teams like the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks, there's so much to talk about there with them. You look at the Los Angeles Clippers right now with Kawhi Leonard coming back and them getting a 126-67 win over the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, there's a lot to talk about with the Clippers there too. And I also wanted to mention this about that before we move off completely with basketball. When you look at the Los Angeles Clippers and the Brooklyn Nets, I get it. The Brooklyn Nets stink anyway, but I mean, that's the second LA team and the second the second New York team, excuse me. It's the second New York team and the second LA team. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be a huge subject for most of the NBA media pundits out there because it's always Knicks, Lakers, Knicks, Lakers. And granted, the Knicks are really good right now, but the Lakers aren't. It's just a glamour franchise as far as I'm concerned. But, I mean, not just that, the fact a score like that isn't just headlining everything right now, in all honesty, and how bad the Brooklyn Nets are is honestly kind of stunning. But I get it. It's the NBA game. We move on, and the world moves quickly nowadays with social media and technology and all that. But I'm just saying, 67 points in an NBA game in 2025 is absolutely laughable. All right, let's move on to the NFL. A big slate of NFL playoff games coming up. On Short Take Saturday this week, I'll have my locked-in predictions in stone of what the scores will be and all that. So stay tuned on Saturday for the Short Take Saturday video. But I just wanted to point out, when you look at the Detroit Lions-Washington Commanders matchup, that game to me is the game of the weekend. And it's just because it's a rookie quarterback with a team that just won a playoff game for the first time in 20 years going up against a team that just started to become a juggernaut in the Detroit Lions. Last year they win their division for the first time in 30 years, and now they're a juggernaut. I mean, that is just absolutely the story of the weekend, in my view. Houston with the opportunity to go to their first AFC championship game. I think it's a nice story, but I don't think it's going to happen. And the Houston Texans have also never won a road playoff game. They have the opportunity to do it at Arrowhead. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Kansas City's just that good. But that's a decent storyline going into this weekend. You look at what's going on with Baltimore and Buffalo. That game intrigues me a little bit because Baltimore absolutely blitzed Buffalo earlier this season. And I think Baltimore and Buffalo will play each other a lot closer. But this game is not... I believe the first matchup, if I stand corrected, I'll look at it while we discuss it. I think it was in Baltimore. I do not think it was in Buffalo. But I do want to double check that real quick. So that matchup to me was intriguing is just because, yeah, it was in Baltimore. And Baltimore absolutely blitzed the Buffalo Bills. So that matchup is absolutely intriguing to me from the standpoint that the Baltimore Ravens stumbled over the Bills earlier this season. The Bills are now at home, and they're going to have to respond. And Baltimore's offense, it's hard to stop. They run the football very effectively, and that's what Philadelphia does really well. We'll talk about Philly in just a second. But this game, to me, might be the most fun of the weekend. I think the game of the weekend is actually Detroit and Washington. I just love the storylines there so much more. But to me, this game could be the most fun because I really, really think either one of these teams can destroy the other. And we've seen Josh Allen at times. I also want to point out, he's never beaten Trevor Lawrence or Joe Burrow. He has beaten Lamar Jackson. But sometimes when he's facing other elite quarterbacks not named Patrick Mahomes, he fumbles in the regular season. So in the playoffs, is that going to be the same situation? I'm not so sure. But the Buffalo Bills have a big test against the Baltimore Ravens, and that game might be the most fun of the weekend. I think Baltimore's going to run the football a whole bunch, and I also think when you look at the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen's going to have some highlight reels on there. It's going to be a close football game, and it's in Buffalo this time around. And the Buffalo Bills getting that additional win over the New York Jets and locking in the 2 seed, now looking critical for them because I don't know, I'd want to play this game in Baltimore if I'm the Bills right now. So that's going to be a really intriguing matchup coming up this weekend. And also Philadelphia and the Rams. I like this matchup too. The only matchup of these 4 I really don't like is Chiefs-Texans, and I explained why, just because I don't think the Texans are going to overcome how good Kansas City is. But what I like about this matchup between Philadelphia and the Rams is the Rams feel hungry. They got hot really late in the year. Philadelphia got hot pretty much in the middle of the season as well, but the Rams, they feel hungrier. They feel like their offense could just explode on you in any minute. It did against Buffalo. I'll point that out. But having said that as well, when you look at the Rams, they also have a big streak of not scoring many points in certain games. They barely beat the 49ers in San Francisco. They barely beat the Arizona Cardinals the second time around. So there's some concerns with the Rams that their offense could be shut down pretty quick. Now, Matthew Stafford has had some really good moments this year, and he had a really good game against the Minnesota Vikings. So I think Matthew Stafford is going to perform at an elite level this weekend. In the pocket, I think Stafford's going to be really hard to stop because he releases the ball as quick as he does. He does have a tendency to turn it over every once in a while, and Philadelphia could definitely benefit off that. I like the Rams in this matchup, and I'm not going to make my official predictions yet, as I said, but the Rams to me feel like the team that could upset Philly. I don't know why. I said Philadelphia, Detroit was almost a lock to make the NFC Championship, but I thought Philly might have gotten Minnesota. To me, the Rams, at any time they could just kind of explode on you. And if I'm Philly, I don't know if I want part of that. But they still have Saquon Barkley running the football, and if he runs the football as efficiently as he has all season, I don't see the Rams having much of a chance this game. But I also will say this, an NFC Championship that's Detroit and the Rams once again, I think it's like their third meeting within the last, if it were to happen, it would be their third meeting in the last 2 seasons. That would be a great story too, and I'd love to see that. Part of me is rooting for it as well. And Stafford, I think he needs some more playoff wins as well to kind of help establish his career. We know Matt Stafford is a Super Bowl champion now. We know to put respect on his name, and we know he was a long-suffering quarterback in Detroit. But having said that, now that he's with the Los Angeles Rams, he's already won the Super Bowl, he's already gotten some established playoff wins. I think it's important for his legacy to win a few more playoff games. So I think Matthew Stafford still has some pressure on him in order to do so. So having said that, that's going to be obviously on Stafford. If he wants to go to Canton to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I think he needs to pad some more stats in order for Matthew Stafford to make the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I still think he's a good quarterback, and I'm not so sure he's a Hall of Famer yet. I think he's got great numbers, but I think he needs some more signature postseason wins. And it's not all the way his fault. It's not his fault the Detroit Lions drafted him. And it's not his fault that after the Detroit Lions traded him, the Detroit Lions all of a sudden got good with Jared Goff. So the storylines of the NFC are incredible. And I would love to see a Detroit, LA Rams NFC Championship. I think that would be great. Not saying it's going to happen. I think the Rams have a shot to beat Philly. Out of all the wildcard teams, I thought they would. Detroit and Philly haven't met this year, too, so that would also be a great game with an intriguing storyline. So we'll have to see what takes place in these upcoming weekend games, but I have no official predictions yet. I'm going to make that determination on Saturday before the playoff games on Short Take Saturday. So make sure to stay tuned for that. We could talk some Cleveland Browns right now if you want, but, there's more articles from The Athletic on Deshaun Watson and what they're going to do with the second overall pick. Is it another quarterback? Are they going to go into free agency for a quarterback? Let's leave the Browns out of this. Let's have a happy day on Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. Let's just leave the Browns out of this right now. Let's move on and talk about Ohio State, a football program that will put a smile on your face when they win the national championship this upcoming weekend. You look at Ohio State and how they've played throughout this playoff. I'm going to give props to Ryan Day. He's done a terrific job. I'm going to forget about the Michigan game completely, even though it stunk. The Ohio State Buckeyes are probably going to win a national title, and I am going to be happy about it, thrilled about it now. This whole playoff run has been fantastic. I've changed my whole view on what's going on with Ohio State. I'm taking that rivalry out of it for a little bit. That's where I'm at right now. I'm just happy with this Ohio State run. And the Buckeyes, I think, are going to conquer Notre Dame. But I think it is going to be a little bit of a defensive game. I think this battle is won in the trenches. Marcus Freeman is a damn good head coach for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And Notre Dame is going to win the battle in the trenches potentially, which may help them win this game. Because they've played well in the trenches all season long. And I think a lot of programs slept on them going into the postseason. I think Georgia especially did. Because Notre Dame was kind of talked about as, oh, they're not really for real. Well, now they find themselves in the national championship game. And Marcus Freeman finds himself as one of the best coaches in college football. And so does Ryan Day as of this very moment. Ryan Day got the Ohio State Buckeyes through this playoff run, I thought, in a phenomenal fashion. So, and obviously, you got to give credit where credit is due to players like Trevion Henderson. It's just been unreal what we've been able to see from the Ohio State Buckeyes, and that last play at the end of the game against Texas was just put icing on the cake if you're the Ohio State Buckeyes, honestly. But I'm looking at some of the stats for this game now, and you look at Ohio State and how they play defense and offense. They're both efficient on both sides of the football, and that's what it comes down to if you're the Ohio State Buckeyes. It's going to be coming down to winning on both sides of the football. Can they play great defense? Can they play great offense? Notre Dame has kind of done that along this run as well, and when you look at how they beat Penn State, defense really dominated, and that's why if I'm the Ohio State offense, I'd be watching Trevion Henderson. I'll be watching Jeremiah Smith because of how great he's been. Will Howard, I think, has been really efficient in this postseason run as well. But you also look at a guy like Jack Sawyer. Did he raise his stock in the NFL draft with that phenomenal end-of-the-season play? We'll have to see. I think he could have another tremendous game this weekend against Notre Dame, but will it be a play as significant as it was in that Texas game? We'll have to see. We'll have to see. But I don't want to just sleep on Notre Dame. I think Ohio State is the likely national champion, but Notre Dame, when they're underestimated, they've come out at their best. I don't think anyone thought they were going to beat Georgia. I don't know if anyone thought that was going to even be in the realm of possibility, and we know we live in a world that's got a lot of heavy SEC bias. There were some people that thought Penn State was also going to roll them, but then we saw James Franklin be the James Franklin coach we always thought he was against Notre Dame. So I think if you're the Notre Dame Fighting Irish right now, you got to feel a little confident that, like, hey, especially in that Georgia game, we were underestimated. We weren't picked to win playoff games. So if I'm Notre Dame right now, I'm feeling confident a little bit that, like, we've been underestimated for a lot of this postseason run and throughout the regular season. We got to overcome and beat Ohio State and signature our national championship in 2024. So, yeah, I'm not so sure if Ohio State's just going to outright win this football game. I think Ohio State will win this football game, but I don't want to be overconfident about it. I'm going to go 21-17 Buckeyes. I think we see a lot of great defensive play from both teams. I think the trenches is going to be where the battle is, and I also think it's going to be with who the coaching is going to, well, I shouldn't say who the coaching, where the coaching is going to take place. Is it going to be Ryan Day on his sideline with the Buckeyes? Is Ryan Day going to make those in-game adjustments better than Marcus Freeman does for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish? I think these are two really, really good head coaches, and I notice when it comes to Marcus Freeman and the players coach that he is, he seems to make not just good in-game adjustments, but he seems to know his players very, very well. He knows the game very, very well, and it seems like he coaches best when everyone underestimates the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And I think Notre Dame was pretty underestimated against Georgia. So, having said that, this is going to be a great national championship. I think it's two programs no one expected at the beginning of the postseason when we saw the bracket that these two teams were going to end up meeting in this spot. I don't think anyone thought that, so I really like that intriguingness about it. But we'll have to see what takes place, of course. And I know I use that line a lot of we'll have to see what takes place, but we really will. But I think Notre Dame makes it interesting. I think they actually get a lead early on, but I think the Buckeyes pull away late. I'm going to go Ohio State 21, Notre Dame 17. And that's my thoughts on the college football national championship. Excuse me, as I take a sip of Diet Coke there to catch my breath. Let's talk a little bit about Jose Ramirez getting that third spot, according to Major League Baseball Network, in third baseman. Number one is Jose Ramirez. Tremendous for Cleveland. He is that good of a baseball player. And I know because he plays for the Cleveland Guardians, he's probably not getting all the highlights, all the rah-rah that we see guys like Aaron Judge get, that we see guys like Shohei Ohtani get, that we see guys like Juan Soto get? Now he's playing for the New York Mets, another big market. We see a lot of these sluggers get all this attention, and they're playing for these big market teams. And sometimes when you're a Cleveland Guardians team, you feel like you're getting slept on a little bit. Like, hey, we have one of the best players in baseball in our lineup right now. We have a guy who single-handedly could probably get us to an ALCS offensively. Not talking about pitching, because that's important too, probably more important. But you look at a guy like Jose Ramirez, his bat could probably get you to an ALCS as long as the pitching's in place. That's how good Jose Ramirez is. Now, Jose Ramirez didn't come up all the way for the Guardians in the ALCS this time around. But having said that, Jose Ramirez has put up some great numbers in the regular season, and he's an all-time great Major League Baseball player. So I want to give Major League Baseball Network a ton of props for giving Jose Ramirez the respect he deserves. I don't know if other outlets and other pundits are going to go all the way out and say the Cleveland Guardians have one of those best players in baseball that we don't talk about because guys like Aaron Judge play in New York and guys like Shohei Ohtani play close to Hollywood, the big glamour franchises. It's probably not going to be like that, but props to Jose Ramirez and props to MLB Network for doing the right thing and ranking Jose Ramirez third baseman, one of the best in the business. He has done a terrific job for the Cleveland Guardians. But it's hard to believe already we're almost 2 months away from the start of opening day. All right, one more thing before we go. I had the pleasure, me and my mother went down to the Pro Football Hall of Fame on Sunday. I didn't get to talk too much about this on Tuesday's show, but we went down to the Pro Football Hall of Fame on Sunday, and we had a tremendous experience. The staff there was phenomenal, great football knowledge. You know, I'm a huge football fan, so talking football with the guys, and so many motivational quotes, and so many, history lessons, and football helmets and shoulder pads to try from the 1920s, or even the modern day helmets that are worn today, and to get to see, some of the great legends that are in the Hall of Fame, such as Joe Thomas for the Cleveland Browns, Terry Bradshaw for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Bob Greasy for the Miami Dolphins, and that perfect 1972 season as a whole exhibit there. Seeing some of the names that have just gotten inducted in, you look at some guys like Patrick Willis for the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, it's just tremendous. It was a tremendous experience. Learned so much, not just about players you already know about, all-time great players, of course, but also about the game itself. There's so much from the game itself that takes place in Canton, Ohio at the Pro Football Hall of Fame that I just want to give a ton of props to that. It was an awesome experience. It was an exhibit on the 1972 Miami Dolphins, a whole video display of all the dynasties that took place. And for those of you who aren't football nerds like me, and even I learned a little bit of something too, I'm not going to hide that, but there's so many dynasties that have taken place in NFL history, and that dates prior to the Super Bowl era. And I know the Super Bowl era is considered the modern era of football nowadays with the merger and all that. When it came to that dynasty display, you look and you see the Cleveland Browns had dynasties at one point. The Detroit Lions had dynasties at one point before they only won one playoff game in 65 years until 2023 when they went to the NFC Championship. You look at the New England Patriots dynasty, of course. Now, possibly the Kansas City Chiefs dynasty will be in there at some point. Pittsburgh Steelers in the 1970s, they dominated all that decade. San Francisco, the Dallas Cowboys. So many dynasties taking place throughout NFL history. And even ones like Cleveland and Detroit date way back before the modern era of football began. And it's just so much history to learn there. So tons of props. Going down to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. If you're in Northeast Ohio and you haven't checked it out yet, please go down and check it out. It's one hell of an experience down there. And there's some great local businesses that are around the Pro Football Hall of Fame, too, that deserve some support as well. Some great restaurants down there, some great stores and shops. And, Canton, Ohio itself, if you haven't been down there, it's not like a huge city or anything like that. We have suburbs in Cleveland that are probably bigger than Canton's population. But there is some really cool things around the Pro Football Hall of Fame to check out. A lot of history there, obviously, from the pro football side of things. But great local businesses, great area to check out down there off of I-77 in Canton. It's awesome. It really, really is. And I'm just speaking on that from my experience there. Go check out the Pro Football Hall of Fame. If you're a football junkie like myself, especially, if you haven't done so already. And I'm sure there's people across the country that go and do that as well. So I just want to give kudos to an awesome experience at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And also their team shop, even though, Canton is as close to Cleveland as it is, there is merchandise from all 32 teams in there, and their gift shop is huge. So that's also always good to go and check out. It really, really is, because there's so much merchandise from all 32 teams at the Pro Football Hall of Fame gift shop alone. So go check it out. You'll get a great history lesson there, as I said. They even have little Xboxes where you can play Madden and try out what's going on with current NFL teams. So, run a few plays and whatnot on there. So great place to check out the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That's going to be it for today's edition of Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. Hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your week. I will be back with you this upcoming Saturday for Short Take Saturday. I'll give my official NFL playoff predictions and my reaction to the national championship game between Notre Dame and Ohio State. I'll also give some thoughts on the CAVS and whatnot too. So make sure to stick around for that. Have a good one, everybody.